already been a little bit of beef between him and Abu Bakr, which is Habib's cousin. They had the little couple fists, like some punches being thrown at each other at one of the UFC events. I think it was a UFC event. Might have been a PFL, but I think it was a UFC event. They got into it a little bit, and then I think they settled it between each other, and the conversation had been had. I'm glad. I don't think to poke fun at it. I think people are they're trying to stir it up. Let's be honest. The UFC is probably not going to let Chimaev go down to 70. They're going to be like, no. If you want to go anywhere, go up. Yeah. Go up to 205 and then go up to heavyweight. If you want to go, you got the wrestling to beat the heavyweights. You know, if you can put the weight on properly, whatever it is, but let's get you to 205 first. You can for sure win a title at 205. For sure. I mean, like, not a lot of those guys can wrestle at 205. So go to 205, defend your title a couple times here.
Any thought moving up, or are you happy where you're at right now?
No, I'm good. Bantamweights, I'm still here. Still gonna, there's still big fights for me to have at bantamweight. So 45, will it happen in the future? Yeah, probably, most likely, but we still got work to do down here at 35.
Is weight cut getting harder, or are you still good with making 135?
It's always hard to answer like how hard weight cuts are, because you feel like you're dying every single time. Anybody that makes weight, it's like, it would be easier at 45, yes, but we're still getting it done at 35 in a healthy manner. So yeah, we're good for now.
They said it sounded like gym myth, the kind of tale that gets louder every time it's retold. But this one hit different because of who supposedly did what to whom. A single confident account says Khabib Nurmagomedov, the unbeaten architect of suffocation, triangle choked Khamzat Chimaev during an intense grappling spar in Dubai. The room going quiet as the tap came. Nobody's handing out belts for rolls. Still, the image stuck because it challenges the pecking order in ways that statistics can't. The timing made the rumor explode. Just days earlier, Islam Makhachev spoke calmly about being ready if the Khamzat matchup ever materializes. It wasn't a call-out drenched in drama. It was the kind of sentence that sneakily changes a timeline. Once Islam said, "I'm ready," fans started drawing brackets, and every story became a data point. Josh Thompson, who knows that room's gravity well, then layered in context. Team Khabib doesn't want old embers reignited after that tense scuffle between Khamzat and Abubakar Nurmagomedov at a UFC event. A brief flurry that cooled fast once elders stepped in. Thompson added another provocation that rerouted the conversation entirely. If Khamzat is going to chase multi-division chaos, odds are the UFC won't roll the dice on him diving back to 170, given how brutal that cut has been. Instead, he floated the audacious path upward, test 205, flirt with heavyweight if the frame fills in, and weaponize the fact that not many big men can wrestle through fire the way Khamzat does. It sounded crazy for 5 seconds, then strangely logical. Imagine a fighter who can bulldoze positions at middleweight and then carry that grind up to 205. Even flirting with heavyweight if the body composition cooperates. There was method to that madness. Thompson's case was blunt. Most contenders at 205 aren't wrestling heavy, and the few who lean that way rarely keep the grind for 25 minutes. Khamzat, by contrast, changes levels like a lighter man and rides like a weighted blanket. If he fills out correctly, he could arrive without sacrificing the burst speed that makes him terrifying. That doesn't make the climb easy. Light heavyweights punch like trucks, but it reframes the risk profile. Instead of cutting down to chase familiar matchups, he could force a brand new conversation in a division starving for pressure wrestlers. But then came the detail that hijacked the day. Kamil Gadzhiev, long tied to Eagle FC and plugged into the Dagestani scene, said he saw the session with his own eyes. Same gym, overlapping camps, respectful greetings, and a decision to roll. At first, the size told the story. Khamzat secured top, applied pressure, and hunted for slice and smash grips that look like a landslide when you're underneath. And then the air changed. From guard, Khabib set a series of quiet traps, collar tie adjustments, wrist control, and angle shifts until the triangle snapped shut. Naturally, the internet split down the middle. One side shouted that sparring is a laboratory, not a courtroom. Maybe Khamzat was experimenting. Maybe positions were gifted for reps. Maybe they started from the knees. All fair notes. The other side argued that the end result matches the thesis. Khabib and Islam run a system built on inevitability, and when that system encounters raw force, The force slows first. If Khabib can catch a bigger, younger, surging champion in a bottom game snare, then Islam, whose top pressure mirrors Khabib's, could reproduce that suffocation under bright lights. That's the magnetism of this rumor. It isn't about dunking on Khamzat, it's about clarifying the puzzle. Chimaev thrives when the room allows chaos. He turns first minutes into avalanches, makes opponents pick terrible choices at speed, and rides mistakes like a surfer catching an angry wave. Khabib's world is different. It's orderly. It says every frantic scramble has a shape, and if you can breathe inside the noise, you can close the walls. Islam's too. This isn't mystical. It's math done with bone-on-bone leverage and lungs of iron. Meanwhile, the sport kept spinning because MMA never grants single-track attention. Sean O'Malley stepped to a microphone and cooled the flames around a permanent move to featherweight. After rough outings with Merab Dvalishvili, plenty of voices suggested the page had turned at 135. O'Malley didn't flinch. He said the cuts are hard. Cuts are always hard, but he's making them in a healthy way, and there's still a list of names he wants to solve at bantamweight. Aljamain Sterling moved up and reinvented himself at featherweight with composed wins, showing the jump can work. Meanwhile, Merab Dvalishvili versus Corey Sanhagen looms in October, and if Corey wins, the Suga versus Corey conversation roars back. And then there's the heavyweight picture, where Tom Aspinall sliced through the noise with northern bluntness. After Fernand Lopez threw verbal elbows from the corner, Aspinall refused the detour. That's fort. He called the commentary irrelevant, nodded to how close Cyril Gane versus Alexander Volkov really was, and pushed every chip toward the date that matters. Take shirts off, put gloves on, door shuts. Everything before that is just fog. Aspinall's promise was simple. Pressure brings out his most destructive self, and the stakes only sharpen the edges. Back to the rumor, because this is where narrative turns into fuel. Gajiev's claim functions as a high-resolution trailer for a film we still haven't seen. It shows a champion with gravity bending into a trap designed by a master who retired unbeaten. It suggests that the path to cracking Khamzat isn't to brawl the hurricane, but to let the eye of the storm drift into a net. And it suggests that Islam, the current standard bearer of that school, owns the patience, balance, and limb-by-limb awareness to turn frantic scrambles into quiet checkmates. Of course, the demand for receipts went nuclear. Where's the clip? Who reffed the round? How fresh were they? What were the starting parameters? Without video, nobody can score the roll, but the absence of tape doesn't make the conversation worthless. On the contrary, it protects the strategic DNA. Rooms that win don't leak. Sparring is sacred precisely because it allows athletes to fail in private, learn ugly lessons, and return sharper when the cameras arrive. For fans, the right way to hold this story is simple. Treat it as unverified yet plausible, and study what it implies about the matchup. Now picture the board if Thompson's suggestion becomes reality, and Khamzat heads upward. Light heavyweights would meet a pace they don't often see. Heavyweights would meet a level-changing threat they rarely train for in full panic mode. A man who can penetrate hips that quickly forces you to fight on a clock you didn't set. Yet every pound added taxes lungs, and every division up reduces the speed gap that makes Khamzat terrifying. That's why the Islam storyline refuses to die. It lives at a perfect intersection of curiosity and risk. So where does that leave the room in Dubai? As a parable mostly. It says that top pressure without posture control can turn into a triangle. It says that pedigree and problem solving survive retirement. It says that a legend can still teach a monster something valuable in a minute that matters. And it hands us a final delicious question to carry forward. If a triangle changed a role in silence, what happens when the lights are blinding? When corners are screaming, when every adjustment takes place with the world watching. Until those answers arrive, every new quote adds another brushstroke. Islam will keep sounding unbothered and ready. Khamzat will keep hunting danger like it owes him money. O'Malley will keep squeezing whatever magic he can out of 135. Aspinall will walk toward the heaviest room in the sport and shut the door behind him. And the rest of us will rewind the rumor again, not because we need it to be gospel, but because it throws the stakes into focus. Greatness isn't just what you do under title lights. It's what your name does to a room when someone whispers a story. Maybe one day we'll see the footage. Maybe we never will. Either way, the idea has already done its work. It reminded everyone that technique ages slower than speed. that traps can live inside avalanches, and that the men who built a dynasty in the Caucasus still believe in quiet inevitability. If that triangle truly snapped shut in Dubai, it was a message, not a scoreboard. And if it didn't, the fact that so many believed it could tells you everything about why the fight world can't stop imagining Khamzat versus Islam under the brightest lights. Until then, the board is set, the whispers are loud, and the stakes feel new.